Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast with Julie Clark and Joe Bauer, where we share the nuts and bolts of real estate investing from our 20-plus years in the industry. Sit back, relax, listen, and immediately take action. Are you ready? Here we go.
Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast, where we talk about the nuts and bolts of real estate investing. My name is Joe Bauer, and I'm here with my, wait for it, amazing co-host, Julie Clark. Julie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing, Joe. I am doing amazing. I like that one.
Thought about it long and hard.
When you say that, I think about what is it that I feel like? How do I feel amazing? Or how would I feel if I was amazing? And I guess, I don't know why, I feel like that means happy today. I feel happy today. The sun's out. Sun's out here in Seattle. I'm sure you got your guns out, Joe, wherever you're at. I know. I don't have my guns out, but sun's out here, and that's making me feel pretty happy today. Plus, we got 2 off-market wholesale deals last week, and I have 2 awesome listings coming on tomorrow. So it's been a good week. It's been a good month, really, with this market adjustment. But where are you at, Joe?
I am in lovely Hayward, Wisconsin, where the weather is about 55 degrees and looks like it's going to rain. So I wish the sun was out and the guns were out, but it's not.
You're going to have to pick yourself up like a cheese hat or whatever they wear in Wisconsin.
I don't know. I'm holding strong with the Seahawks gear out here, but I'm probably going to get my butt kicked pretty soon.
Well, what is this thing that happened to you recently? You were on a trail run, and what happened? Some tree fell down in your face, or what?
Did you see that? Yeah. So we were out on Isle Royal running through a trail, and it was nothing. It was just woods, just not anything that much different than like the woods outside of Seattle. But we're running along, and I hear this cracking, and it's actually a funny story because Emily, my girlfriend, she heard it, and we'd been warned that there are all these moose on the island, and they're aggressive this time of year.
What is it with you and the moose, man? That's like 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, but here's the deal. She thought it was a moose, and she goes running, and they told us to hide behind trees. So she takes off and runs away from me and hides behind a tree. I was back behind, closer to the tree that was actually falling down. And I knew that that's what it was. So I'm sitting there looking back to make sure that it's not falling in our direction. And I can kind of see that it's falling away from us. So I just continue running. And I look up ahead, and she's gone.
Oh, shit.
Hiding behind a tree. But yeah, full-size tree.
I kind of like to call that abandonment, man. She was like, out of here. That's like Emily, man. We gotta have
You should bring it up the next time you see her.
I will. That's hilarious.
Yeah, but
I'm trying to find a great transition. So keep talking, because I like to try and find my transitions to get over into our special guest today. I got one. Maybe that is Joe's out there. No, I don't got one. I'm weak today, guys. I don't have a good transition. I got nothing. So just tell us who's with us today, because he doesn't need a transition. He can stand on his own.
Yep. So today on the podcast, we have Davis Hsu, the Director of Real Estate Valuations. Davis, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
And that would be Director of Real Estate Valuations for our favorite local hard money lender, Veristone Capital. Shout out to Veristone. We've been supporting them, and they've been supporting us at Seattle Investors Club for years and years. And we love you guys. And therefore,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Happy to be here.
Yeah. And you know what? Of course, we love our main man, Travis Swandell. You guys, if you guys have been hanging out with us long enough, Travis is our connection to Veristone, who we love, our sales guy. But Davis is also the man. Director of Real Estate Valuations. That means the ARV guy, the guy that lays another pair of eyes on your deals, everybody. And what is the number one thing not to screw up as a real estate investor? That would be your comping and your ARV. top of the list there. So we've got a special treat today because we have got Davis here who's been doing it. How many years for Veristone or in general?
Real estate professionally for about 12 years. Veristone in this incarnation, and I've been a part of other incarnations of it probably since 2011. So kind of in this last market run up as we were kind of coming out of the dark times. But the dark times also, I was still kind of hustling in this space in different ways. So,
well, that brings us to our first question, Joe. Give him the deep.
Yeah, Davis, let's hear about you, how you got into real estate and how you got to that spot with Veristone or even before.
Or where are you from even?
Yeah.
So I grew up in Federal Way, Washington. Went to the University of Washington. I was a skateboarder. I went to Thomas Jefferson High School. Graduated in 94. I'm 42 years old.
What shoe size? No, I'm just kidding.
10 and a half. So yeah, I went to UW, and I went there again and got my MBA there in finance. And I kind of started a career kind of more in traditional money management. I even passed my CFA in three different times, and kind of got involved a little bit in kind of more the investment world and that kind of other side of the world. But really, I was really always more fascinated with doing real estate because the returns were better, and you could paint a house and improve it and buy it off market or whatever, and you could leverage it with a loan if you do it right. So bought my first house. Everyone thought I was crazy. They thought this is back when the stock market was cool, like in the 90s, type thing. And I think I bought my first house when I was 24.
Nice.
And it was a little townhouse up in Bothell, King County side, with my wife. And we bought that. And then I bought my next house, sold that one to a buddy. His dad still has it as a rental. Hasn't raised the rent in like 15 years because it covers his mortgage, one of those types of things. And then started flipping homes. And this was before the market crash. And then with Barry Horn and Tyler Bentham and Dave Damrell, we started a group called Liberty Capital, where we basically buy foreclosures in a fund. And that worked well until it didn't work, because I bought 50 homes in like about a year and a half. And, we started selling them. And for the first batch of like 16 homes, we probably made a profit on 12 of them. So we were happy with that. But then we got stuck as the market crashed in 2007. And so all the homes lost a ton of value. So I was cleaning that mess up. And, but in that time of starting that fund, I realized that I couldn't keep doing this, because 50 homes is just too many homes. And so the only way to really leverage is to do a hard money fund, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the genesis of the idea of like, man, we got to get into hard money. At the time, Dave, one of our partners, he thought we could only do second liens. And I was like, I was standing at the auction seeing second liens getting wiped out every single day. So I'm like, I don't think that's going to really work. But I kind of let Dave and Tyler kind of do their thing. And me and Barry kind of wound down this fund that had all these problems, because we bought in all these properties, all the values were going down, investors wanted out. So, and we didn't structure it right with a gate meeting. Like at Veristone, if all the investors wanted their money, they'd have to wait in line, and they distribute the money over a long period of time, right? So there'd be no proverbial run on the bank. Well, I wish I would have known that, years ago, but I didn't.
So you guys started the original fund. That was the one that all the lessons got learned on. And then after that, Veristone Fund.
Then we started a hard money fund, and those didn't work either, by the way. And so it wasn't really until and then I went, and I was just a real estate agent at Keller Williams, and I did short sales for Will and Jimmy, so for James Daynard and Will Heaton. And they didn't even have Heaton Daynard yet. And they didn't even really have a hard money fund yet. They had a wholesale or off-market group. Okay. And the only thing you could farm in those days was short sales because nothing else was happening. There was no deals to flip. No one was buying land. You know what I mean? It was like a total desert. And so the only thing you could really farm at the time was short sales. And so I was basically their short sale agent. So I think we put on like 200 listings. Jimmy just called me. He was like, hey, will you do this? And I'm like, yeah, man, I got nothing else going. And so we popped off on like 200. We only sold 50 of them. That's how hard it was, you know?
Yeah.
But we were just happy to have it. Like, I was just happy to kind of just be doing any business kind of going through that. So
what year was that?
This was from like 09 to like 11. So in 07 is when it crashed. 07, 08 was a lot of winding down, not fun stuff. Pretty depressed. And then probably I started doing the short sale thing with Will and Jimmy probably like 09, 010, 011. That strategy kind of started easing up because the market started to rebound a little bit and we started kind of working through. And so then I jumped back into this hard money gig. It was called Liberty Capital at the time in 2011. And at that point, Will and Jimmy were also finding deals that they could actually start flipping again, you know? So they kind of moved, they don't have to do short sales. They could kind of just move in all the stuff they do now, which is a plethora of things. And then they open up their own brokerage as well, which, you know, that's its whole nother side. But then really coming back to what became Veristone was when Dave said, hey, I'm only going to do first liens. And I'm like, okay, if you do first liens, I'm back. I'll be your valuation guy. And we built a little auction website on the side as well. So now that auction website, you know, it's like when you build software, other people start coming in and making better software than you and offering it for less. So it's just kind of like, I'm not really, you know, I'm not trying to make my name in the software game because that's kind of anyhow, but we did do that and that just did generate some leads for us. But we just started, I think the first year, maybe in 2011, we did like 18 million in loans. I think the next year we did 30, and then it kind of switched the name to Veristone, and then it went to like 60 million. And in the last 3 years, we do like 200 million essentially. And and then, you know, Oregon was a huge part of that, still is. And we do a little bit of lending in Colorado and a little bit in Idaho as well. But still, for the most part, it's vast majority is in Washington.
Are you underwriting the deals in Oregon, Colorado, and Idaho also?
So what I do, I don't actually underwrite the whole file. So our owners actually are the final underwriters where they'll actually stamp it. And they will actually look at the entire they'll look at the scope, which is the remodel budget or the construction budget, and as well kind of test their exit strategy. Does that make sense? I don't actually do that. So that's the full picture of underwriting. What I do is I do a very, very key part of underwriting, which is the valuing the house, valuing the asset or the land or the property, and giving it a value of what it's worth today, right now, if you didn't do anything to it, which is oftentimes that's actually the more disputed number than the exit value, by the way. And then the exit value. The current as-is value is a much more disputed number than the finished value. The finished value, sometimes people give us numbers that are high, but even if they're high and even if we're lower, they don't even need to know that because it doesn't even matter, right? Now sometimes we do have to tell them, hey, we think you're pretty high, and you know, but honestly, the more disputed number is the front end number, because that's basically playing into the down payment. Because we're not the kind of shop that's just going to let you go 10% down no matter what, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And so
you guys are not worried. I mean, the big picture, like you said, the owners of Veristone or whatever look at the bigger picture, but you're focusing on protecting the loan from, if it is what it is today, let me be safe on that number, right?
Yep.
And that's what you're going to base your loan on.
If we turned around and sold that property and listed that property on the MLS right now, today, could it get a little bit more than what the investor paid? Would it get exactly the same number the investor paid? Or would it get a lot more? And we see all three of those scenarios depending, you know what I mean? So sometimes they're even listed, but there's a story that actually, if it was listed correctly, it would actually sell for more. But for the most part, if it's listed, we're just taking that number. It's kind of like, what are you talking about? It was just listed. That's the value, right? But a lot of stuff we do is off market. And so, but we're not going to just mark it up 10% just because it was found off market. Sometimes the off market deals are about listed deals. Sometimes they're way below, the investor's getting a hell of a deal,
With the market adjusting, you can't rely on the list price because the average broker's probably a ding dong and nervous or whatever. Maybe the sellers we're having a disconnect and they're pushing the agents too hard and the agents are agreeing just because they want to get a deal. You can't really rely at this very moment.
It's my job to see through all that. So it's my job to interpret a listing and to try to look at the agent comments and just use all the experience I have to understand, hey, what are the dynamics that are going on in this transaction? Is this a crappy agent? Is this a panic seller? Is this, is there an extenuating circumstance going on here? Is this property not showing well because the tenant's a jackass and won't, you know what I mean? Or what is real, or is this, did they put it on auction.com and they actually hurt themselves by doing that? Or they should have just.
For all you investors listening, all these things that Davis is talking about as what he analyzes are all things you should be looking at yourself when you're looking for deals, right? You should be looking for improper listings or shitty photos or wrong square footage. Those are good search terms for all you ninjas out there that want to drill down, right?
Because there are agents out there, they just don't know how to value. And so,
hey, you're talking my language now.
You know what I mean? And sometimes that's a good thing, right? So now most of our deals, I would say the vast majority of the deals we do are off market, but we do get listed deals that come in all the time and they're just mislisted or they're dying on the vine or something's going on or they're just really strong negotiators. There's all those different things. And then obviously in every phase of the market, there's different dynamics and the geography plays in and so
let me ask you then, and I'll go back and I'll have some other questions for you. But since we're just kind of freestyle talking here, are there properties? I call issues on properties. I call them variables, right? So a variable might be it's on a busy street. A variable might be it has a shitty layout functionality wise. A variable might mean the neighbor next door is crappy. A variable might mean it's a huge lot, which is more of an emotional decision for a buyer than, I think investors always overvalue huge lots on properties, single family homes at least, because they think it's more land, it's more valuable. Well, that's not necessarily true, because
we go by the usability of the land. So if the lot's a triangle, not a square, or if the lot's sloping hard away, you know what I mean? Or it might be big land, but it might not be usable. And then the other thing is, if it's 3 acres, what's that 4th acre really doing for you? It's not going to give you the big bonus of if your lot's 4,000 square feet. Well, damn, it would feel much better if it was 8,000 square feet. So that incremental 4,000 square feet would be big if you had a little property in Kirkland or Redmond where I live, or if you could get extra 4,000 square feet on your lot, man, you'd be feeling really good. Versus if you're out in Yelm, where everything's 2 acres or whatever, and then your extra half acre, it's not going to really do much for you, especially if the land's not usable, that type of thing. So lot square footage is a big deal to me. We definitely factor it in, but it's kind of like square footage on a house. What's the most important square footage on the house? The first 1,000 square feet is the most important square feet. Going from a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot house, that's not going to really tickle me very much. I'm not going to give you much more extra value.
I'm glad you know
what I mean?
That.
Because you don't need the 8th bathroom. You know what I mean? But damn, I really would like an extra half bath in a 3-bedroom 1 Rambler that's 3 and 1. I'd feel a lot better if it was 3, 1.5.
Right.
So that's
are there certain things when you see them on properties that you're like, that's a negative, like a variable that right now it's September 27th, 2018. We are right now in a market adjustment. There's more inventory coming on the market. It's still, in my opinion, at the moment, a seller's market. There's not it's not an overabundance of supply. We're still, but it's a change. And so really the adjustment is a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of down, a little bit of whatever, but it really is a mental thing that's going on with buyers and sellers and, and things like that. I think there's a huge, off paper, just complete mental shift, and that's going to create something for a while, and then it might settle down. But aside from all that, are there variables on properties that you think are worse than others? Like, what are the worst things what was the worst property somebody could buy that you see people bringing your way that are mistakes for them to buy? Especially when you're new, I tell you.
I could go on. I give you a list of all that stuff, but the reality is, let me just talk more generally, because I've even bought a house that was on like 405. Okay. But I bought it for $330,000 or something, like it was some, and so it was still a good buy. And I sold it for, I don't know, a lot more than that, so you can buy a property that has a flaw. Okay, I live on Rose Hill. There's some power lines on Rose Hill. And the lots that were, by the power lines, they sat forever until this last change in the market where now they're building, or they were, maybe that's going to stop. But in, a couple years back, you're seeing the signs out. You're seeing, they're like, we don't care. So the reality is this: when you're in a hot market, flaws on your property get discounted at a much lower rate. Or they're either not discounted at all, or it's very small. In a regular market or a shifting market, being next to a freeway, that should be an $80,000 discount, depending on, your price point. It could be up to that. And
which is the market we're heading into.
If the market's really bad, it's not going to sell at all, ever. Like, unless it's just not even going to be worth it for you to sell it. So when you have a flaw, it's kind of like we went to a bar, right? And whatever you think of me, but after a few drinks and then the things kind of weeded out, you might actually be like, oh, I actually want to talk to him now. You know what I mean? Or it's like, oh yeah, he has a flaw, but you know what? He's cool. You know what I mean? Versus when the market is slowing down, you're going to be like, oh yeah, Davis, yeah, he's kind of short, he's a little bit, it's like all the little flaws that I have are going to be more accentuated, and you're going to be like, I don't really like Davis. You know what I mean? Or not tonight, kind of thing. So that's kind of, I know that sounds crude and rude, but that's kind of how these houses that have flaws, you'll take a flaw in a hot market, but in a softening market, the pricing of those flaws are going to be
exponential.
They're going to be accentuated, or they're just not going to go home with you at the end of the night, if that makes sense. Like they're just not even doing, they're not going home with you. And so my buddy, I have a buddy that has a listing. They have a listing, and I want to be very respectful of the seller. It has a little flaw on like the patio, and it's a little dark. Okay. That flaw, if this thing would have sold 6 months ago, they would have overlooked it. He can't move that property right now. It's not moving. The price is so low right now. It would defy all comping. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So I don't want to tell you, never buy a house next to a freeway, never buy a house next to a busy road, never buy a house where the driveway slopes down so water can come into your garage. By the way, I've done everything I've told you I've done probably 10 times. Okay. And I can go on and on and on. I got 1,000 stories of all that, personal stories. But I would just say that your flaws are going to be accentuated in the discount you would need for these flaws, especially the flaws that can't be fixed. If you're next to a freeway, that can't be fixed. If your condo is situated in the back of the complex against a wall, you know what I mean? And that can't really be fixed. Your cabinets can be fixed.
I'm noticing that homes right now, because there's more inventory coming on, and no garage right now is actually a cause. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. That's something that I'm like, wow, really beautiful flipped home in Bellevue. Nothing wrong. Gorgeous, Rambler even, but no garage sitting because the stuff that's not flipped or just the average stuff is selling because it has a garage? People are getting
so Travis probably hates me because I always ask about parking. All the sales guys around here hate me because I'm always asking them about parking. And the reason why I do that is because as we kind of started Veristone, of course parking is a huge deal. Well, in the last 3 or 4 years, you were seeing houses sell for the same price as another house that had parking or didn't have parking. It didn't matter, right? Almost like parking didn't matter.
Right.
But I'm telling you, as the market shifts,
hope you guys
hell
are
yeah,
listening.
Hell yeah, parking matters. And so
matters.
I don't just go by square footage or bed bath count. So when I go do my list, I go, give me the square footage, give me the bed bath, give me the square footage now, give me the square footage when you're done. Give me the bed bath count now. Give me the bed bath count when you're done. But I'm huge on the type of house, and I always want my sales guys to know, hey, a tri-level, that is not a 3-story townhome. Do you know what a tri-level is? I'm going to draw you a picture of a tri-level, a split level.
Basement.
Yeah, 1.5. What's a daylight rambler versus a rambler? What is below grade footage? You need to understand all those things. You need to know what year the house was built, because the year a house was built, the more you do this business, every decade tells its own story. Even if the property is in Snohomish County or Pierce County, and anyone that stays in this real estate game, if you're a lifer, if you're an addict, if you're a junkie, you're going to understand what is in a home in the 1920s. Why were no homes built in the 1930s? When a 1942 house was built, what is real similar on the foundation and the wiring and all that? And then you go in the 50s and 60s, and hopefully you had some uncles like I did that used to build homes, or you know what I mean, I can tell you stories about what it was like in the 70s when interest rates were 18%, and you go into the 80s and people are doing cocaine, in the 90s, and they started coming out with different types of building, and you go through that. So the age is a big deal. But sorry, I went all that to say parking is huge to me. Always has been, always will be.
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking, man, that'd be a great topic for a book, for somebody to write houses through the ages. Maybe it exists. I don't know, Joe, maybe we can find something like that.
Well, I think investors, the good investors, they understand this. They might not articulate it the way I just did, but they know it inherently because they're basically sifting through properties as they're hunting. They're throwing the ones out, or they're gravitating toward, you know what I mean? Like an age of a home.
Let me just say, we're going to get out of time here enjoying each other here, but September 27th, 2018, as the director of real estate valuations, looking at deals and knowing all this stuff right now, here's the thing, Davis, is we like to be somewhat specific and give some specific nuggets to our listeners. We're called the nuts and bolts of real estate investing because we like to dive down a little bit. Can you tell me any specific non-starters, like you would caution investors? There's a lot of new investors that listen to us. There's experience, there's agents, there's, who knows? And
Julie, I hate to pour water on you. I don't have any non-starters if the price is low enough. I know that sounds, like it's a cop out.
There's something interesting.
But it's like, to me, there's no such thing as a non-starter if the price is low. And so
does it matter to you if it's a non-starter and the price is low and what their exit plan is? Because what if they want to flip it? You can't, you just said a few minutes ago that you're not going to be able to sell something in a down market, for a while.
Well, you can if you price it. You can if you price it low enough. If you price any property low enough, you can sell it in any market. Okay. But if you want to price it really low on exit because it has a flaw, you better damn well get it for a really low price on the front end. And you better be efficient in your remodel and better be fast.
An exit strategy in case you need to flip it to a buyer.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any non-starter. Just know that if your property has a flaw, you go to market, you better be aware of that flaw, and you better know that there's going to be some sort of discount for that flaw. It's either not going to sell for the price you want it to sell, or it's just, or if you have it priced in before you go. And so
when you're talking to the sellers, everybody who's listening, these are these flaws that you need to be, being prepared with your comps to point out that the other houses that are selling don't have these flaws. You need to put the flaw in their face if you want to get the deal that Davis is suggesting. And
that flaw can be a flaw that you correct while you're investing and you're updating, or it could be a flaw that you can't correct and you have to pass it through to the next buyer. And
the awesome thing is a flaw you can correct. Another thing to be searching for, guys, like correctable flaws. I mean, that's the story of flipping kind of anyways, but maybe there's types of flaws. Maybe you could become a flaw niche expert, people. Who knows? There's all kinds of things that's cool. There are some people that listen that are so niche that love that stuff. That's a great idea right there. But more so, I just want to make clear to everybody that no matter what, when you're looking at these deals, whether you buy it right or whatever, you do need to have your plan before you buy it of more than one exit strategy, just in case, because you go into it thinking you're going to flip it, who knows? Nobody has a crystal ball. No, we're not, we were talking before the podcast started, and I don't think neither Davis nor I, nor Joe, think that the market is like tanking down to some terrible thing, but we don't, the world is crazy right now. And I think that's part of the reason why, there's just uncertainty in the air about politics, about, Amazon, who knows, about real estate taxes are through the roof. There's uncertainty. I'm an investor as well as a traditional broker. And I'll tell you what, half the people that I deal with on the traditional broker side are moving out of Seattle, at least half, they're
well, it's not an easy place to live anymore. It's not an easy place to live.
Place
yep.
To live. That's for sure. Okay. Well, how about this? Tell us, what's your formula? Like, what does it look like? Davis gets a deal across his desk. Now what happens at that moment? Walk us through it. A day in the life of Davis.
The first thing you need a correct address, which sometimes doesn't come in. You gotta nail that down. If it's a piece of land, we're hunting for parcel numbers. Then I pull it up on Realist, which, Julie, I don't know if your listeners know what Realist is. I'm sure they do, but that's how I do it.
Only, can you buy access to Realist, or is that only for agents? As far as I know, it's only for agents. I am an agent, so.
Yeah, so that's what I do. I don't know what investors do if they don't have access to Realist, but Realist is essentially like kind of going to the assessor's site, but it's just in a different format. And
I guess that's the answer. You guys would go to the assessor's site.
Yep. So I basically I verify everything about the property. Hopefully the file has some pictures, or maybe it's listed, and so I can just look at the listing. But really, the first thing I do is I look at the house, and I try to just ascertain what the year is, what the lot size is, what the square footage is, bed, bath, and then like what's the floor layout? Is it a split level? Is it a daylight rambler? Is it a 2-story? What's the lot topography? What's the parking? So I just try to familiarize myself, with the house, and really try to.
Or do you just do this in your head because you've been doing it so long?
I've been doing it for so long that I did write one out, but I mean, it's all happening all at the same time that my brain, I can't even, I'm just seeing it. And so for the layout, I know the layout of most homes, probably 80% of them before, just from looking at one picture, I already know the layout. So it's not an issue, but you're going to have certain situations where we're just going to miss on our valuation because there could be a layout challenge and we don't ever catch it. So that's just part of doing business. Now, as a lender, we can get away with that because we're just the lender. You know what I mean? But as an investor, you better, you better have your layout factored in. It's not just about square footage. You know what I mean? It's like, for instance, let's say it was like 800 square feet, right? But on a Rambler, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. That lays out good. I have duplexes with that layout. Awesome. What if it was 800 square feet in 2 stories? I don't like that layout. It's only 400 square feet of floor. And then you got the staircase. It's not really a good feeling that you really want. And so, or if it's like, well, it's 400 above grade and then 400 below grade.
Square feet and listed at 4 bedrooms.
Right. And then that's another thing is people think bedrooms are some magical thing when common area, you need the right amount of common area. Now, years ago, I used to kind of just play the square footage game at Veristone because I was like, I trust our investors that they're going to put the correct number of bed, bath, and common area for the square footage. Well, good investors do that. And then investors that aren't as good, sometimes they overvalue, an extra bedroom thinking it's going to, bump the value when now you've lost a bathroom or you've lost a common area. So you need to have the right balance of common area, bed, bath, and then garage. And just stealing the garage away and converting that to a bedroom is not some magical, sometimes it does add value, but sometimes it's a net wash depending on the neighborhood, the price point and everything else that's going on. So that's kind of the first thing I do is try to figure out what I'm dealing with on a house and then kind of getting a picture of where I think it's going, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I do is I just do my radius search. So it could be, I typically do, quarter mile, 6 months, but in certain situations in Seattle, I might use a square or a rectangle because it's laid out more like a grid. And let's say I want to stay below 85th, or I want to stay above 45th, or I want to stay west of, I want to do less shy. I don't want to get into, closer to some certain street.
What I always do for myself, I'm a major geek when it comes to, I think I'm actually pretty good at the whole underwriting ARV thing. And Joe, you could probably throw some of our podcasts that we've done on my spin on that sort of stuff at the bottom of this podcast and the show notes. But I basically coach people to stay within the natural boundaries, of the subject property.
Yep.
So if that means you're close to, 85th over in the Green Lake area, you're not going to cross over 85th because it's a main thoroughfare. So your radius.
Don't cross over freeways or major roads. Use that square or use a custom cut.
Green belts, actually.
Yep. And then on waterfront or view properties, I do what I call custom cuts. So I'm really going to follow more the topography of the coastline, right. or the slope line, so to speak. And so I call those custom cuts. I typically do no restrictions when I do it. I don't limit anything because I want to see everything that's going on in there. I'm not trying to cherry pick. That's another thing why I am not an appraiser. I don't cherry pick comps. So I will try. I used to want to have like 25. I've been doing this for so long. I could probably do comp with 8 to 16 and actually do a halfway decent job. So now I'm like under 20 because I don't want to be inundated with information because I know what I'm looking for. And then if I can't get what I'm looking for, then I can expand my search and then limit it again. So then maybe I'll go half mile.
For you.
Yep.
Let's compare notes on this. When you have to, if you can't get any comps in your 6 months back and quarter mile out.
Yep.
When you expand your search, this is two dorks talking to each other that you guys are witnessing here. It's awesome. Do you go out to half a mile or do you go back further like 9 months or a year?
It all depends. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but you got to know when to do both because there's certain situations where, let's say I really want to be in this neighborhood. Let's say I'm in South Cove, which is this little neighborhood over by Vassar Park in Bellevue. Kind of like, I don't know if you know where, kind of the bottom of Lake Sammamish, right?
Yep.
And I want to be in it's like West Sammamish Estates and like South Cove, or I forget the name. And they have like beach rights or something, right? And I want to comp a house in there. It's a very homogeneous neighborhood there. In that situation, I might not go out further, Julie. I might just go back in time and then adjust for the time factor.
Dude,
because I want to.
I'm a back in time. I never cross over ever.
Well, I think it depends. I think there's certain if I'm doing it in Puyallup, I'm just going to go further out.
Well, the thing is about doing that way is that you got to be then aware if you're switching school districts.
Yes.
If you are getting, like you said, beach rights or some special club thing. Yeah. Those are the things that so you guys listening, you guys taking notes, we're both not fans of crossing over our half mile or natural borders, right? We're debating here together in front of you virtually. What's plan B? You guys, if you've listened to some of our old podcasts on this topic, you know how I do it. And Joe's going to throw those in the show notes below. But, you guys have to pay attention. School districts are so important. So when you start spreading your wings, that's like could be $100,000 difference or a $50,000 difference.
Yep.
Like you could be in even Burien, and you're in the rights of the Cove or Normandy Park, or you're in the rights of the Gregory Heights Swim Club or whatever that is versus not, right?
Yep.
That's value. You got to know that. Over in Somerset, the elementary school, what is it? If you're on one side of like 148th, you're on one, and if you're on the other, you're on the other. Somerset Elementary versus whatever. You guys got to be paying super attention when you're comping to double check that it's the same schools.
Yep.
Right?
You have to go out in radius at times when you know when to do that, because the time factor of the market is more important. Because if you go back in time, your adjustment on the appreciation might not actually be the right adjustment. So let's say you go back a year, but you're staying in that neighborhood, and you're kind of like, oh, I think values have gone up 12%. Well, that neighborhood might have gone up 18% or maybe 8%, because you might be taking a really generalized number for a county, where in that actual neighborhood might have been appreciating, at a faster or slower pace, or there might be even a unit type in that area that's getting sucked up really fast, or maybe it's kind of like a kid. They don't grow for a year, then all of a sudden they shoot up, right? Because
you know what I would do in that case, guys, is for you investors that aren't Davis or me that are, super ninja'd in on these things because we've been doing it so long, you should simply pick up the phone and call a local real estate broker that has done deals in that neighborhood and ask them, what's the appreciation in this neighborhood in the last year? Is there anything special about this neighborhood that, is like a dividing line or a threshold that I need to know about? When you're doing your due diligence, pick up the phone. I can't tell you how many times I've won on like wholesale deals because I pick up the phone and I call the agents on all the pending properties, and especially in this last market, when things were selling so far over list and people are too lazy and they don't call the agents to find out. They won't tell you, by the way, when it's pending inspection. But when it's actually pending past the inspection, if you ask in the right way, they will tell you or allude to the number. And you have major intelligence there because you took the moment to make a 5-minute phone call. So the reverse is true now, is calling around, and if you get stuck in a situation, call the local agents. It doesn't have to be investor-friendly agents. Just call and say, what's the appreciation been in the last year? Or, hey, how much have you guys dropped in the last 6 months? That might be more of a phone call that you have, this next quarter or two, right?
So I was taught this business at the foreclosure group, okay? Like Kerry Hemmingson and Christopher Hall. And I remember Christopher Hall, one of his best qualities, and he had a lot of good qualities, he would call the specialist agents, because he could comp all day long, probably better than me. But he knew the situations because his background was in residential. He knew how to comp, and everyone in the organization knew how to comp, and they had people that could comp. Their investors knew how to comp, but he knew when he needed to pick up the phone, and he was really good on the phone. And he knew there was a time where there was a condos expert. Why they would give him this information half the time, I have no idea. Maybe just because he was nice, honestly. And he just knew how to ask him in a very respectful way.
True. You do need to ask in a nice, respectful way.
And he would call this. He would know in the back of his mind who is a condo specialist for this building. And I'm going to call them, and they're going to know floor by floor, the floor plan, the floor plate, and what's really going on. And the HOA has this issue, and there's an assessment here. And then he also knew when he had an issue with comping, maybe he could comp 9 or 10 things, no problem. But there was 1 out of 10 where he was just having a tough time. You know what I mean? And he knew when to pick up the phone and call. And again, these agents, they always magically picked up. I don't know how or why. And somehow he co-opted them to give up the goods.
It's called hustle. That's my favorite word of, 2008.
And they would dial him in on a comp. And also, a lot of times they would give him a little extra information on that house or the next house over. Oh, by the way, the next door house is for sale for, what I mean? That type of thing. And
you guys remember, you get rewarded for hustle. I mean, the point of this whole thing, not to go on and on. Now I am going to cut you off because we do need to keep cruising here. That is that you need to pick up the phone. You should make a rule for yourself, everybody listening, that you are going to pick up the phone and make, say on every deal that you're going to call 2 agents, or you're going to do 2 phone calls to do some extra due diligence. Make that part of your routine, and you'll be surprised at the information that you get. But let's keep trucking here. So we talked about radius and going back or crossing over, and we covered that one. What do you do? What's next? So you do your radius.
So the next is my bracket. And so I'm looking for a superior, an inferior, and a close comp. And it's a sandwich, bread on top, that's the superior, your meat, is your close comp, and your, the bread on the bottom, right? And the tighter the bracket, the tighter that sandwich, if you squeeze that sandwich and, the juice is running out of the burger or whatever, you're squeezing it so hard, that's better. Now, the hard comps is when you have a big distance between the burger and the bun, or you only have one bun. You don't have a lower end bun. You just have a top, or you have you have an open face burger.
Tight buns is what
you just have the bottom comp. You have an inferior comp, but your unit's actually the best house in the neighborhood.
Don't use the word unit and buns in the same sentence.
Oh, my bad. So I'm trying to find a bracket, a superior, inferior, and a close comp, and I'm trying to find that as
I love you guys.
I'm trying to find it as tight as I can get it, where they're close. Yes. Yep. If
Joe,
they're $100,000 off,
you can officially use the word explicit on this.
Sorry, guys. It's all good though.
Keep going, David.
You're good, David.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So basically, I'm just looking for, so let's say I'll have 20 comps, right? I'm really looking for the 3 best comps, and hopefully one's a little bit worse than our property, one's clearly better, and one's really similar.
You gotta say it.
What's that?
You're not looking for the biggest one, are you? I'm sorry, guys. I just had to say it. Joe, you asked me if I was amazing today. I'm amazingly in the gutter. That's what sorry. All right, keep going, Davis. I can't help it.
So, do you want me to talk about dollar per square foot, or just skip that? I can go in on that. I don't necessarily.
Let's do that real quick, because that's another comparison talk that we can make on how you do it versus how I do it. You do it full time. I mean, I do it.
So I used to be a big dollar per square foot guy, but in the last 3 or 4 years, you really weren't using dollar per square foot on a lot of deals, because prices have changed so much. People are buying smaller homes. Things have grown so much and changed so much in Seattle that bracketing was really all I really needed to do. I really didn't need to do dollar per square foot. But now that the market's shifting again, I'm kind of looking back and kind of double checking on my dollar per square foot more now than I was maybe in 2016 and 17. Does that make sense?
What does that mean? So, as far as I'll tell you what I do, and maybe you can tell me how you do it.
Yep.
The same or different.
Yep.
So let's say you have 2 houses side by side, right?
Yep.
Same neighborhood.
Yep.
And they're both 2,000 square foot houses. Okay.
Yep.
And they're both 1 story with a basement homes.
Yep.
Okay? One house has 1,300 square feet on the main floor and 700 square feet in the basement. The other house has 1,000 square feet on the main floor, 1,000 square feet in the basement. The one that has more main floor square footage, above ground space, whether it's a daylight basement or not, don't care. Main floor space is worth more than basement space. And so the house that has the larger, everything else being equal, same, level of improvements, the same number of garages, the same lot size, whatever, the house that's 1,300 square feet on the main floor is going to be worth more because it's got more main floor space. And how I do it is every time I do a comp, I take the house, I'm gathering the info that you are, my checklist of have a garage and blah, 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 everything else. But what I do is I break down this house between main floor and basement, or main floor and second floor, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And I break that down. So when I do the comps, I line it out on my spreadsheet when I'm, or whatever, and I put them all right next to each other and see who's got the more main floor space. And obviously, if I have a house with a basement, I'm only looking at other houses that have a basement, unless I have absolutely nothing to look at. Then I might look at a Rambler and add on $50 a square foot for the space in the basement, or whatever.
But you have to add more than $50 a square foot on basement now because construction costs are so high and house values are so high that we used to do the $50 thing, but I add way more than that now. Okay, depending on the neighborhood.
Because my numbers on, let's say I had that 1,300 square feet on the first house on the main floor and 1,000 square feet on the main floor of the house next door, right? 300 square foot difference, right?
Yep.
What I have done that has worked for me, true and true, and maybe it is a little conservative, but knock on wood, dang it, it's worked for me great, is I apply in the Seattle area. Now, if you're listening from the Midwest or you're listening, we do have people listening out of state. Your price per square foots out there are different. So you'll need to come up with your own numbers. It's the concept of what I'm talking about on splitting main floor space and basement space or whatever, above ground, below ground. But what I've done, Davis, and you'll have something to say about this, is I apply on that difference of the 300 square feet. I don't take if the house sells, would sell for $400 a square foot, I don't take 400 times that $300 a square foot. I use just a premium. Like you said earlier, that extra 1,000 feet or whatever is not worth as much to me, right? So that extra 300 square feet isn't worth $400 a square foot to me. It's worth $125 a square foot for that 300 square foot premium to me. And when I do it in the basement, same situation. 300 square feet, I take $50 a square foot. Now the concept is what I'm talking about. Those are my numbers that has worked for me beautifully forever. Tell me what you would do differently.
So I bet you my numbers would come up with the same numbers as you. Honestly, all I would do in that situation, I would test it on my calculator and I would just add. So let's say the one that had 1,300 up and 700 down, I would throw a $10 to $20 a square foot bonus on that one. And then I would run it and see what the number came up with.
On the total square footage.
Yep. And I would just add it because it would be kind of doing what you're doing. I think if you did all the math and ran it through, I bet you would come out with a similar thing. And then I look at the number and then I feel it. I know it sounds like I'm supposed to have some magical mathematical thing, but I look at the number and I look at the other house and I look at the dollar spread. And if it better not be $100,000 different for that, you know what I mean? It shouldn't be that high.
So I hear what you're saying, and I'm gonna test your theory against mine when I'm looking at my own deals because I have a lot of experience. I'll know whether I'm
not gonna do it just on that. I'm just gonna start there. That'll be my starter, and then from there I'm gonna kind of move, because. Here's the thing about it. You can use dollar per square foot, but there's all kinds of price points where I know there's a certain house. I want to be under 500. I want a 4 on this number. Right. I don't want a 500. I don't care what the layout is. I don't care about, you know what I mean? And then do you ever want to price a house at 417? No. Okay. Go the listing of all the homes. They're all bunching up. Like if you did some sort of data analysis, there would be some sort of queuing, curve or whatever at the 25s and the 50s and the 75s and the 99 and 100, right? And so if you're in the lower part of those brackets, now as your house progresses through its value growth, it should be going in some sort of linear, pathway of growth, it doesn't. It goes in these clumps, right? It goes in these clumps of $25,000 clumps. And so when you're kind of in between is when you have a hard pricing decision, but you're gonna want to price around one of those. It's like, why do you go to Walmart and everything's $9.99?
Well, to me, what I do is I use my calculation as my first threshold.
Yeah. And
then I round up or down strategically as a business decision.
Yes.
On where I should price it from there, but at least I know where my zone is.
Yeah.
And I do not when there's no comps, I rely on my method to tell me if I end up in no man's land. If I end up in no man's land because there's not a lot of comps, then I will advise that client, that investor, myself, or traditional retail guy. I'll say, look, this is where it looks like it's spot on, but I don't know. I'm just going to now owner of the house, whether that's me or somebody else, it's your decision on a business based on your situation. Do you want it to sell fast? Do you need
Yep.
the money, so we got to stick here, or what? But now it becomes a business decision once I've relied on my try and true method. If I end up in a little bit of no man's land, am I going to go down, bump, or stay? And that is where the feel comes in for me from a strategy standpoint rather than just a pure numbers standpoint. But I do rely on my numbers to get me to the base.
So valuation is a one number, okay? But valuation is not what you price your house at,
That's a
okay?
good statement.
So you have valuation, and then there's different pricing strategies. Now, all the pricing strategies ideally should be tied to your valuation. Okay.
Right.
So they're not like, they are related. Okay. But your pricing strategy and your timing and your pricing, you might be pricing to be the most attractive. Let's say there's 3 girls. You want to be the most attractive of the 3 that are active. Right. And so you might be going for that place. So your pricing is going to be different. Or maybe you're like, you know what? I want premium price. I'm not in a rush. You know what I mean? Like, if someone's going to come up and get this house, they're going to come get it. If I don't sell it, I don't care. Like my son, he sells art. Some of it he prices really high because he's like, if they don't buy it, I still like having it.
It's kind of like the higher end market. You probably want to price high because you know you're not going to get your full price.
Yeah. And so pricing and valuation are related, but they are not the same thing. And so,
Agreed.
So valuation's one thing. That's the first step. But then your whole pricing strategy, whether it's low, high, mid, and then how you stage it and how you bring it to market, that's a whole different layer, I would say, on top of valuation. So they're related, but they're totally different. And if you're good at real estate, you understand the difference, right?
And if you're an investor out there that's getting started, or you've been started for a while, or you need some, that we're in an adjustment, you damn well better be working with a good broker, an investor's broker. Not, somebody who, there's a difference between an investor's broker and a traditional broker, hands down. So just remember that. You guys need to be working with somebody that understands all the dynamics and has a lot of experience, in particular, I think, in the market that we're in here, September 27th, 2018, until we settle down, or you might get a little spanking. And like that, right? Well, maybe some of you do, but that's the point. So, Davis, what about for me? Not every house is the same, and there's this and there's that. And so I have numbers that I use to actually, I kind of like try and pretend everybody who's listening that is, takes words very seriously here. I'm just one of you guys. I'm not an appraiser. Davis, you're not an appraiser, are you?
Nope.
So we're not giving legal appraisal advice here today. As a disclaimer, everybody who gets their panties worked up about that stuff, we're talking amongst friends, and we're talking to our friends, the listeners of the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate Investing podcast, and all our Seattle Investors Club members, and whoever else across this beautiful land is listening. We're just talking shop in front of you guys. This isn't a directive, signed in blood to you. So learn from this and do your own homework. But, what I do, going back to before I say that, is that now once I have that base, now I'm comparing, okay, well, how many garage parking spaces do I have? Or do I have a master bathroom compared to my comp that I have to use that doesn't? And so each parking space to me, covered parking, or garage, I'll say parking, is worth $10,000. That's what I use. So you got a house with 1 car garage versus 2, there's a $10,000 difference. You got a house that has a master bathroom, just a standard one versus one that doesn't, I call that 10,000. You have a house that has oil forced air versus gas, I call that 10,000. You have, brand new windows versus not, maybe I'll call that 15,000. I'm a little conservative, right? But what do you have any numbers that you adjust? Any like that? Do you have any numbers you can share?
I used to do a garage. I used to have like a garage worth $40,000, but I think you got to be really careful about that because the prices of homes have changed so much in the last 5 years that I almost wonder if a lot of my numbers are really low, if that makes sense.
What's wrong with that? I mean, a little bit.
Well,
especially heading into.
I guess I guess because, I'm dealing with thousands of different investors, and so, or hundreds of them at least, maybe thousands, probably. I mean, I've done 5,000 hard money loans or something, so maybe I have done thousands. But the you got to be careful with the numbers, because I honestly think, because we're doing stuff all the way in Thurston County, Pierce County, Snohomish. We're doing stuff in Colorado, and so I don't mind having a specific number if you really know that neighborhood and that price point and that fit, but I don't necessarily.
It's part of a benchmark. It's not the only threshold. It's the, then you got to look around in the bigger picture, and you got to see if the price you land on by using these numbers that we're talking about are thrown around.
I think the bigger thing is if you're on oil heat, you better factor that in. Whether you call it $10,000, you better at least know that there's going to be people that are going to walk into your house and not want your house. So maybe it's 10,000, maybe it's not, but it just is not a sale. And so, like, maybe it's just like where you can't sell to that person, okay?
Well,
because they don't.
Just got to be at a lower number, like you said.
Or it has to be a lower number because they're going to put in their own oil, like my cousin, he had an oil thing, he had to switch it out, and it probably cost him $10,000 to do that, or maybe it cost him $6,000, but the pain and suffering to go set all that up is probably worth $10,000, and a garage, I think 10,000 in certain neighborhoods, that's low, to be honest with you, to get an extra garage space. I would think in certain areas that's actually worth more than that. But it depends on kind of what's going around. But you definitely should have various factors. The other thing too, let's say you're by a major road or a freeway, right? If you say, oh, that's 40,000 or 80,000, that number is shifting depending on how much of a buyer's or seller's market that is. And so
correct.
It's like, that's why I don't get really super attached to very specific numbers for that. I just know that you got to, if it's on septic, you better factor that in. If it's on a well.
I'll say to you guys, remember this. Let's say you're in a neighborhood and you're on the same street of a neighborhood, and you're on one side of the street and your comp is on the other side of the street. Well, what's in the backyard, right? So because across the street could be worth 50 grand more if the backyard's not backing to a freeway. You know what I mean? Or I'm just saying a number. I'm not using 50 grand as the number, but you guys have to be not just looking at the house, but you need to be looking at the bigger picture, like the Google view, the Earth view or whatever of the neighborhood and where that house fits into, all the components that touch it.
Julia, the way I look at real estate is number one, location, which is in the address. Number two is square footage, bed, bath, kind of what we talked about before. But the third thing that I look at is I call it situation. And situation is kind of what you're talking about, the backyard. And situation is, how does the house sit on the street? Is it too far close to the street? Is it too far back? Is it, nicely in the middle? Is that good?
Right.
Yeah. Is it shifted to the side? So I'm on a flag lot, but I'm actually the front lot of the flag lot. And so I'm the sideways house that you drive by before you get to the back house. It's better than me. And I don't have a backyard. I call that situation. Or the fact that the house in the back, I have to drive by another house that's looking at me sideways before I get there. And I don't even have a fence. Again, I call all that situation. And situation can extend to topography, view, or even down to more emotional things. Like, do I feel protected when I'm on this? Is this house protected? Am I exposed? So it's almost these more vulnerable, emotional, human emotions. Like, do I feel anxiety in this spot, or do I feel protected? And a lot of times, being at a desk doing the valuations, if I actually go to a property, my conviction of the value of that property, up or down, skyrockets, because I'm picking up the situation and the emotional factors of that property. And if you're a good investor, I think you kind of understand what I'm talking about, where you can't even articulate it, but that's the final kind of piece beyond just square footage and location and age and all that type of thing. And it's even beyond layout. Situation is even different to me than layout. And I think that's a big factor. It's where the house sits on the lot and its proximity to other things going around it. Where if it's sitting on the front of the lot, like 5 feet off the street, you don't want that. You know what I mean? Or there's a big tree right next to it, so you can never get a good picture of the front and you can never show off, versus if it's sitting back and you can take a really nice picture of the front, bam, there you go. Well, that's going to appeal to people. All these buyers
speaking of pictures, I want to insert a little off-topic thing here, but for all you investors and agents that are listening, photos make a difference. So I see some of you guys with the stupidest photos. Pay attention to the photos and stuff.
Investors have gotten so sloppy because the market's been so hot that they basically don't drop signs anymore in the last run up. They don't make flyers. They don't call everyone that actually comes into the property because they don't need to. They don't feel like they need to hire a professional photographer because their phone they think is just as good.
Guys.
And they got away with all these bad habits in the last 5 years because you could just use your iPhone and you could just, not have an open house and not have flyers and not call all the people that went in. But I think in this next market, you're going to have to go back to some of the old traditional ways. You know what I mean? And that means
you're going to have to work with brokers that actually work. Not this, throw it on for you.
Throw it on, yep.
You get what you pay for, and you're going to need to think twice about that. Hey, what is the mistake? Last question, and then we'll get off.
Yeah.
Two questions. What's the biggest mistake you see investors make on deals when, like, hard money lenders and so forth have had to take the properties back, or they lose a ton of money? Is there a common theme there? Is the ARV wrong? I mean, if they came through your shop, it's not, because you're probably involved in that somehow. But do they blow their budgets or buy stupid properties with variables on them that make them unattractive that you didn't know about because you didn't go to the property, or what?
We don't really get that many loans back, which is funny. I'm trying to think of all the loans that we've really gotten back. We really don't get that many back. And the ones that we do get back, usually there's some sort of fraud element to it. Okay. You know what I mean? Where they're not even, they were never going to really do what they said they were going to do, or
right, I hear you.
Or
they're even robbing Peter to pay Paul type of
thing. Or even in their whole draw situation, there's a lot of shady stuff going on. So we haven't. Now maybe we were going to get some more back in the future. I hope we don't, but maybe with this market shifting, you know what I mean? Maybe in 6 months, you're going to be like Davis, and it's not like any of us did anything wrong, but we're just going to get more stuff back because, the market's not as strong as it used to be, and that's fine. But I would say for the most part, the stuff that we do get back, there typically is some element of fraud, even if it's just partial, that's kind of going on. And so I don't know if they started with an intent to deceive or they were kind of halfway. Gotcha. And so that's kind of the downside of when you let people borrow the remodel costs, where you have to have a really good system to kind of check to make sure the money's going to what it should be going. But we've had mistakes where we've been hustled where, there was like unpermitted land and we paid for the permits and there was no permits, so we've had a few of those years back, Right. But those have kind of been probably our biggest mistakes. So
let me switch gears on you. So if you had one investment strategy that you were going to use for yourself right now, what would that be? Would it be still flipping, or would it be buy and holds? Everybody's starting to get excited, about these buy and holds, and they've been out of the woodwork for the last year. I don't know what they're buying because the prices hasn't come down low enough to make them worth buying, but or is it new construction? For if you were going to choose one investment strategy that you think is hot for 2019, what do you think that would be?
Well, my favorite investment strategy is a buy and hold a hammered duplex. And so that's kind of what I like. But here's the problem with that strategy right now. Like right now I have one that we got, it's like running at a 10 cap in Renton. And so we're thrilled, right? It'll probably pay, like we probably like refinance all our money out, most of it, and it'll probably pay off in like 8 years. And we bought, the thing was hammered. And when we took it over, it had the power cut and everything. was about to get demoed, and we kind of brought it back to life, and it's rented out, and rents are really high. So we're really happy with it. And it's hard to find those deals, and we look, and we're not expecting always to find that deal every time. But the problem I see with my strategy, which I like, is that I just don't like where interest rates are out right now, and there's nothing I can really do about that. And so, because we don't mind putting some leverage.
Financing on deals, always ask, right? That might be.
Yeah, and we're definitely open to that. But if you can't get that seller financing, if you're seeing like non-owner occupied interest rates at 6%, that's not really I'm good,
I hear
and
you.
so
but back again though, wouldn't that maybe translate into just having to get it for a better deal, right?
But like you said, the sellers of the income properties haven't gotten to reality land yet. See, and so like I got a good buddy who does apartments. Well, a lot of people want to sell apartments off market, and that's what he does. And they're calling him because they know interest rates are going up. And they know that the value of their apartment, if they're going to sell in the next 2 to 3 years, is probably not going up. You know what I mean? Right. So there's no point in holding it another year if they wanted to get out. Now, if they want to hold it for the next 10 years, they're not calling them because it doesn't matter. They don't care where rates are going or what the value of their apartment is because the thing penciled before, and they're just going to keep letting it run. It's like a little machine, a little business. But if you are going to sell and interest rates are going up and that cap rate is decompressing, so to speak, I guess, where people aren't paying 4 caps anymore. Now they want 4.5 or 5, and people were cool with a 5 cap. Now they want a 6 cap, and your value is dropping. And so, yeah, I do think the values are going to drop, but I think the sellers aren't quite in reality land yet on a lot of these. And so you almost have to let the market kind of, like you say, spank them a little bit to kind of get into reality land.
There could be some cherry picking that can happen, little nugget for all you guys listening on.
Hey, there's still crazy investment deals going on in this whole
maturities. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so one last thing then. How about ADUs? I know I saw something that you did that you had some involvement. Do you have any insight on properties with ADUs? Or those? I mean, I guess with an ADU, you have to. It's an owner-occ thing, right? So.
I might do an ADU on my property, and I've done some research. I haven't really actually researched too much in Seattle on the ADUs, but I would imagine it's even more favorable. But I've done research in Redmond, Kirkland, Linwood, and Renton on ADUs. And I think with construction costs where they're at right now, that I don't know if people are going to be popping those off as much as you'd think until they get those construction costs down.
How about mother-in-laws? Do you get investors thinking it's a good idea to try and build mother-in-laws into their, basements of their places as a sales, marketing, value add?
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about, absolutely. Yeah, people do that. Mother-in-laws in even like luxury homes, people will throw in a little extra unit. What's the bonus for that mother-in-law though? Is it $100,000? Is it more? I'm usually pretty conservative with the value bump on that. It's not like now it's a duplex and we double the value, kind of thing. I do think there is some value add for it because people can Airbnb it or they could put their mom in there or their friend or whatever.
Right.
But you got to be, I'm pretty conservative usually with like the bump. Like I'm not typically going to give this thing like a $300,000 bump or something like that, or even 200, just because they have a mother-in-law,
No.
And an ADU is to me is like a detached building, that type of thing. But I definitely think there's value add for a mother-in-law. But you just got to kind of figure out about, how much you want to give that. You could almost do a little income model of what you think you can rent for and then kind of back into a number, off of that.
The problem with that is that then it has to appraise, and the appraiser's probably not going to be counting an income model in a residential home.
So even if, let's say you took an income model, you might take 60% of that for the value add, to be honest with you. I don't think you can take the full value, you know what I mean, and just attach it to the value of the house.
I don't think so.
You know what I mean? So, but you might start there to kind of give you a little ballpark of what the cash flow would be. And then you might just take a percentage of that, if that makes sense, and kind of tack that on. But if you're losing square footage to the house, you better net that out. This is not, if you're gaining something but losing something else, you better watch that swing and factor it both ways.
Right. Well, let's talk about Veristone as we wrap up here, because this has been a long one and an informative one. I hope you guys have all enjoyed the details and nuggets flowing out of here, and the comparisons on how, we do our things, which we kind of get to the same point. We do them the same with a little bit of different twists, which is awesome. Is let's talk about Veristone and how awesome, a service that Veristone offers, and kind of make a distinction, because there's so many people out there. If one thing investors are, they're cheap asses. We love you guys, but you are cheap mofos. Let me tell you what. And so people focus on little fees, this and that. But one thing that we thought about, we were talking about before we got started here, is that difference on some of these lenders that are offering, 9%, interest rates versus maybe the higher rates that some like Veristone might be asking for. But there's another difference, which is in the documentation, right? Say something to me about that.
Yeah, so a lot of people that I work with, and they're all friends of mine, they work at these different companies, and they offer 9%, which is great. And if you can get that, I'm telling you, go get that 9% money. But a lot of the 9% money is full doc. So it's the amount of documentation you would need to get a traditional loan, or damn near close. And it is appraisal based. And so sometimes they can kind of make the deal happen and then appraise it after, like later. Or sometimes they kind of need to set that up, and that might slow your speed down a little bit, or it could throw a little monkey wrench in your deal. At Veristone, we're no appraisal, we're no doc. I think we might pull your credit, but we're not really I don't think it's not really a full documentation deal. It's not even a partial doc deal, to be honest. So we're basically no doc, no appraisal.
You're not relying on that person's credit. It's just a file stuffer in a glance.
It's a file stuffer, but really it's the value of the house, what of what it is today and what the house is going to be. And do you have an exit strategy that's halfway believable? And
what does full doc mean? What does that mean to you?
I don't even know, because I don't even work at these other hard money companies. Yeah. But I think it's almost like a traditional loan, if not the same. Like if you're going to go,
you get investors who went and tested their toe in that water come back to you guys just because of the ease of the no doc and the no appraisal and the, is that?
I think if we're charging 11 or 12% and these guys are charging 9%, I bet you there'd be a thing where they're like, hey, if you guys came down to 10%, we would just give all our business to you to be no doc. And that's where kind of the market's going to have to figure itself out. There's other people that are very organized and they're not in a time crunch on their deal. And they're just going to be like, hey, I could save 1% or 2%. And all I have to do is provide paperwork, and I got nothing to hide. And I got nothing, all my stuff's done. I got plenty of income to show and asset. My credit's
pristine. If you're totally dialed.
If you're just dialed in, well, a lot of people, they're just not, or they have too many investments going on at one time. They got a bunch of projects going, or they're just not as organized. Maybe they're really, really good at doing this business, but they don't have all their paperwork in a row, or they're too busy to be grabbing, pay stubs from X, Y, and Z, right, and all that. And so anyhow, the difference is, there is cheaper money out there, but at the same time, when you do no doc versus full doc, it's kind of comparing apples and oranges. And so that's kind of the difference. So you always got to keep that in mind. It's not just a rate thing. But it's really now maybe the market will go there eventually one day to 9%, no doc, no appraisal. You know what I mean? Maybe we're moving there. I don't know. But I don't think the market's quite there yet. So there is a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison right now.
Well, regardless, this business is about relationships. And here at Seattle Investors Club, we sure do love our relationship with Veristone. And now we've introduced Davis Hsu to all you guys. And another reason maybe to go to Veristone is to get the advantage of having Davis's eyes on your deal. So we thank you for hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
And awesome stuff. Been around a long time, Davis has, and I hope you guys enjoyed that today. And other than that, Joe, how can everybody find the details and if they prefer to read or whatever on this podcast?
Yeah. If you guys thought this podcast was so awesome that you listened to it and now you want to read the transcript, you can do so at seattleinvestorsclub.com/51. That's seattleinvestorsclub.com/51. And if you guys would like to give us a review on iTunes, which we appreciate, you can go to seattleinvestorsclub.com/iTunes and get that done. You just follow the little prompts and you will do that, because every 5-star review that we get helps us to expand our reach on iTunes.
And I'll say, guys, that we are doing so well, and we thank you for the 5-star reviews you've been giving us. It is allowing us to get some awesome podcast guests, as awesome as Davis, going forward, that we know you guys are going to love, even some national type figures, which is going to be awesome. Here in 2019, we are going to turn up the heat. So help us out as much as you can, because that gives us legitimacy to make those big calls, to gather more and more information that we can share with you guys. Right on.
Heck yeah.
That's all I got. I'm going to go lock down not lock down, but I'm going to finalize, I guess I'll say, one of our wholesale deals here in the next hour. So I am over and out.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Davis, thanks a lot, man.
Excellent
Thank you.
job, Davis. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to the Seattle Investors Club podcast. If you have questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, shoot us an email at info@seattleinvestorsclub.com. Now go out, take that action, and build that real estate business. Thanks for listening.